take long.
We're going to talk about step 4, which is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. This will be a great one, Charlie. I know way too many people who get stuck here, so please help us dissect this one.
Well, I got stuck here too. I remember when I first read the steps, I looked at that one and I'm like, there's no way I'm doing that, so they can forget that, because I don't want to dig all this stuff up and whatever I've done. But actually, it made so much sense when I understood what the purpose of the step was, and that was to really take a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself and everywhere I had been in my past. So I used some of my exercises I had done on the 3rd step to help me want to do this step, the 4th step. So really what this step is about, it's a review of my resentments. And I always called my resentments, anger in a party dress. That's how I had them. So, and Pia Melody taught me that resentments were victim anger. So a resentment, when I hear people say, oh, I have such a resentment, I'm like, well, what was your part? Where do you think you didn't have any power in that? So you're making yourself a victim and you don't let go of that. So having a review of all those things that you look at can kind of give you a different perspective of what's really going on. And looking at your resentments, looking at your fears, and the big book tells us we have, 100 forms of fear, which I certainly had every one of those, I believe. A review of your sex conduct. And that's where a lot of people look and go, not going there. And really the only thing that's on your inventory should be the harm that you've caused either yourself or another human being in a sexual way. So it's not like you don't have to write down everybody you had sex with or thought about having sex with or anything like that. It's not that. It's that harm has to be the barometer. So that if there's a harmful thing that you did, even if it was slight, just write it down, because you're going to have a sponsor go through this with you anyway, and they're going to help you understand what was yours and what might not be yours. I had a lot of things on my list the first time I ever did this that my sponsor said, well, Charlie, that's really not on you. That's on the other person. So I had to have help with that too. And then a review of harm done to others. And then the other thing I think that people leave out, which is very important, is a review of your assets, because no proper inventory of anything you could take. Like they say, there's a little bit of bad in the best of us. There's a little bit of good in the worst of us. So an inventory without looking at all your good things, because so many people have been addicted to a person, place, or a thing, a substance, or a behavior, whatever. And then they forget that they're good people low down inside of that their behavior has made choices that aren't good in their life. But you don't want to forget that you are a really good father, a good listener, a good mother, a good daughter, whatever, friend. And you need to look at a lot of those things, because I believe that the person that hears your 5th step with God should be listening for the nature of the wrong, because that's what the step says. So a lot of times when I've heard people's 5th steps, I've tried to listen for the assets that have gone awry to the character defects.
Okay.
So I try to help people link those up. We'll talk about that in the 5th step, but the 4th step is writing down those things. There are a lot of words in the step. If you follow on page 64, on page 65 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it gives you a rough outline of how you can do your 4th step. And a lot of sponsors like for people to do it that way. When you're doing a sexual 4th step, you want to say who the person is, or the place, or the thing, and what happened, and then you're part of it. And what I like for people to do, which I've done in my step packet, is giving them, there's there's some forms that have already been made for you. I just fill them in and check the little blanks. So I've tried to include some of the words of the character defects that might be coming up. But basically, there are 3 parts to us as human beings. It's our social instinct and how we see ourselves in the world, wanting to be loved and accepted. We, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, we have to belong somewhere, right? When it should start in our family, but it doesn't always for us. So I know I've played a double role. I was one kid at home and a different kid at school growing up with my alcoholic parents. And, but I wanted to be accepted, and I still do. I still have my set of friends and people that I want to love me and accept me for who I am. And then there's a security instinct, which is, you know, we all need food, clothing, and shelter. Those are other basic human needs that we have. And when those get interrupted with an addiction, we have to look at that and see how we've interrupted our basic needs and maybe others too. So it's taking your inventory in that category. And the third one is your sex instinct, because all humans have to be touched or we don't thrive. So sex is a way that a lot of adults touch each other in a lot. It's supposed to be in a loving way, but in our culture, it's gotten out of hand. And it's unfortunately, people are doing things that are against our own principles. And writing those down and getting in touch with those and looking at those. And I know, like we do in sex addiction, we have disclosures that we do with people, which we encourage people to be honest to their partners. And that gets into all kinds of stuff when you work the steps about just your inventory, not anybody else's, not anything before this person. It gets pretty complicated, but doing a basic fourth step really helps you to get honest and to help make sense out of what's going on. So I know that when I started to, one of the really good promises is that before we're about halfway through, we'll know a new power and a new freedom. So at 4, you're getting close to halfway. So I know after I did my 4th step, and certainly after I did my 5th step, I began to spiritually get some of the promises that are coming toward you. Some people get it after the 4th step and the sunlight of the spirit, but realizing that I was spiritually sick, and that began to really dawn on me that it wasn't, I heard I had a disease, but the spiritual sickness was something I had to wrap my head around, and working the steps and reading the literature helped a lot. So doing the 4th step and getting all of these, resentments down on paper, seeing where you're thinking you might be a victim at someone else's expense, or dressing up anger to say, oh, well, that happened a long time ago. I don't care about that. I'm done with that. No, you're not done with that. And writing it down again really, really helps. So if I review my harm that I've done to others, it really to help me to get honest. So that's a spiritual principle. Practice honesty and viewing my assets. How hard is it to take a compliment or to look at something good?
Yes.
I found that too. It's like I had to learn that when people would say something loving and nice to me, to say thank you, because that was their perception of me. And maybe not, maybe they were lying, but I didn't have a right to put that myself down because of that. So that step helped me to be able to take a compliment and learn that I'm not 100% bad human just because I've made some mistakes. But I think some people start feeling that way, like because they've done certain things that they're all bad, and that's not true. You have to put that back in perspective.
So when we talk about searching and fearless, what is the meaning behind those words that you use as a guide?
Well, let's see. Oh gosh, that's a good one. I have looked at searching. For me, searching is the continuous process. I'm continuing to search. And then we practice that in the 10th step, don't we? Every day it's asking us to look where we were at possibly at wrong. Where were we selfish, self-centered, self-seeking? Where did we cause harm? What is my part of that? In other words, the steps really taught me that when I have an interaction with anybody, I have a part of it. Doesn't mean it's my fault. I think people have to get out of the fault-finding business to work the step, because It's not a fault-finding mission. It's just looking at what happened and what my part is, and how do I affect you with my relationship. I could wake up and say good morning, and if you're not in a good place, you could perceive that I'm being really mean to you or something. So did I do anything bad or wrong? No, but I'm going to search to see if I said that the wrong way to you, then I won't say that anymore to you, because I had a part in that. I want you to look at your part, and I will look at my part. And so the fearless part means that even if I'm afraid you won't love me, or even if I'm afraid that, somebody's not going to like hearing this, or I'm not going to like it, I still have to be fearless enough to write it down and look at it. So the fear, it really takes the fear and it helps you to learn to deal with it, because I did have fear doing my inventory. I can't say I was completely fearless, but the fact that I was trying to practice fearlessness helped me not to be so afraid. And most of my fears were about, offending others, or what would they think of me? And
Right.
I had to give that up. So doing this step really helped to look at my part.
I think for me too, it was, I also had a really hard time putting positive assets on the list. That list was really short. Somebody told me it will be so freeing if you don't overthink it, just write, and like you said, then the sponsor can help you identify if that even should be on there. But that was really helpful for me too, because I noticed when I first started, I was like analyzing every little thing I was thinking about writing down, to see if I really should put it on there. And I could always make a case for, oh, that one doesn't need to be on there. So it was really helpful for me to just write everything down and then plan on having somebody help me sort through it, for the next step. And I think one of the big things for me too is just do this step. Like I'm only doing the 4th, I'm not doing the 5th, so don't think ahead and think about, I'm gonna have to tell this to somebody. Nope, just get it on the piece of paper.
Just get it on the paper, right. And thank you, I'm glad you said that, because if someone doesn't have a guide or a helper or anything, one of the things that I've heard through the years and through my practice is people get stuck at this step.
Yes.
And here's what I tell them to do. I say, go home, get a piece of paper, forget the book, forget the diagrams, all this stuff, and do 4 things. Write down everything and anything you've ever been angry about in your whole life. I'm angry because my mom made cookies after I got home from school and I'm fat. I'm angry because whatever. Just get it down. Just write it on paper. The second thing is write down anything and everything you've ever been afraid of. So I'm afraid of the dark still. I had to write that on that paper. Now, that may not seem to have anything to do with drinking or drugging or using or sexual addiction or any other addiction, but it is one of my fears. And so it's all interwoven somehow, but just being willing, again, to write it down, put it on a piece of paper. I'm afraid of snakes. I'm afraid of rats. I'm afraid of a lot of things. And so I had a big, long list of things I was afraid of. It's not just afraid of people. It's a lot of things, and so there's anger and fear. And then the sex inventory, the third one, is anything I did in my life that harmed another human being in a sexual way. So that could have been, women sometimes use sex for power, and I all of a sudden got really honest about that, how I had used that in my life sometime, of withholding or moving away from it or toward it because of something I wanted or didn't get. Mm-hmm. So it was just really hard to get honest about that, but it was only what I did that caused harm. And then the last one were my assets. So I was asked to do those 4 inventories, and that was easy to do. Yeah, I could write 4 pieces of paper of anger, fear, sex, and assets. That wasn't so hard. So sometimes you have to just get it really simple like that. Just break it down and get it simple like that. And then as you go along, because you work the steps throughout your life, I think. You don't just do them once and say, well, that was good, did that, bye-bye. It helps to move you along in your life. But yeah, you're going to be working these steps in and out of your life. So doing a really good, honest 4-step really cleans you out. And it's a good thing. It's like I said, everything on your list may not be a bad thing, but it's all connected to who you are.
I agree. So, okay, are we ready to move on to step 5?
Yeah, I think we should talk about that now, because that's a really good one.
We'll pause this one and we'll move on.
Okay, thanks.